Thank you so much for the kind introduction, and thank you for being here. It's a true honor to be at Oslo and at this beautiful room. Everybody speaks about the Greek crisis for the past 5 years. I have a very good friend who is in the lecture circuit about Greece, and he told me recently a very nice quote that, you know what, increasingly, being Greek feels less like a nationality and more like a profession. And I felt that this sums it up. So I'm going to talk about a venture that, along with a couple of friends, Greeks who studied abroad and came back to Greece at the beginning of the crisis, that we started during the crisis in Greece. And while we did that, coming from completely different, I would say, spheres, I was involved in the political scene of the country, others were from academia, entrepreneurs. We all shared the common understanding of the Greek crisis. This is not, no. Yes? Yes, now it's working. Okay. So we shared a common understanding of what the Greek crisis was about, and we felt that it wasn't exactly what you would read on the cover of The Economist or in the Financial Times. It's not a portrayal of necessarily a purely economic issue. It's much more. We felt that there was a deeper crisis underneath, an institutional crisis and mainly a social crisis. Basically, we were seeing very low levels of associational participation in Greece. We were seeing, you can see, even in 2002, much before the crisis, no membership of associations. Trust in institutions, this was back in 2002, it was much higher than it is today. Today, as you can imagine, after a 25% recession of the GDP, depression perhaps, trust has even declined less. Trust towards the political system in Greece, 3%. Trust towards the parliament, more specifically, 4%. Trust towards the justice system. Now, this was a study yesterday before I came to Oslo, 7%. Trust is very low. Greece has the lowest trust towards institutions in the European Union, out of the 28 countries of the European Union. And why is this important? Why is this whole trust issue important? Well, social capital, as it has been formally defined, it has been perceived by, among others, a professor at Harvard called Robert Putnam, who has a fantastic book out, it was released just a week ago, called Our Kids, How Social Capital Has Declined in the United States in the past decades. It's perceived as a locomotive of long-term growth. And if I don't trust you, then how can we form a new venture together? If I perceive you as guilty until proven innocent and not the inverse, how can I see the political system and the economy moving forward? I just want to say, because we're in Norway, that the country with the highest social capital in the world is Norway. It's a category of its own. And this issue, we call it in Greek, pou είναι το κράτος, which I think Norwegians will find amazing. It rarely snows in Athens. It happens once every, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And there was this fantastic video by a lady that had snowed in front of her porch, and she was so much pissed that she went outside her house and she started screaming in front of a camera, "Where is the state to clean the snow from my porch?" As if the responsibility of cleaning the snow from my porch is not mine. There is a lack of responsibility on certain parts of the country, and this is reflected in the trust indicators. So this problem it was very high in Greece, but you can see it all over the map. Basically, you have indifference for the commons and for the political situation increasingly, less good stories in politics, fewer party members. There is associational participation is declining. And our original diagnosis is that trust towards local institutions, though, was higher than trust towards the central government. People tended to trust mayors, even in Athens, even in random municipalities of the country, more than what they trusted the minister, which was a good sign. Cities were perceived as the front line in the Greek crisis. They manage your daily problems, they collect your garbage. And there was a new law voted in Greece in 2010, and a new version of this law, which started last September, which is when we launched this venture, towards more power at the hands of the mayors, which we felt was interesting. So we felt that part of the solution in this had to do with crowdsourcing, that citizens felt that their opinion was being taken into account, which is of course, different than outsourcing. We wanted to gather collective intelligence about the problems, and we wanted to make Greek citizens accountable towards the problems that they had in their municipalities. So the original idea was, let's start by them first looking at these problems and addressing them. Crowdsourcing has been used extensively. Most recently, a very recent example is Iceland. Many believe that this was a failure, the Icelandic constitution, because even though it was voted in a referendum, the parliament did not pass the new constitutional law, but citizens' opinions were taken into account. The US government has used crowdsourcing methods through the Open Government Initiative and through the Social Innovation Office that Obama instituted starting in 2008. Rahm Emanuel in Chicago has used participatory budgeting. So we felt that all of those techniques were relevant from the crisis that we had at hand. Very recently, in the case of Finland, the Finnish Open Ministry allows citizens to start their own petitions for laws. So taking this into account, and many of you must have heard this fabulous quote, "Beware of Greeks bearing gifts for the Trojan horse." We wanted to use a cute version of a Trojan horse, not a nasty Trojan horse, but a cute Trojan horse for the mayors. Because when we originally said to the mayors that we knew, we want to make you more accountable towards the citizens, and we have an idea. Our idea is that we will create an app for the mobile phone, which will allow the citizens to map all the problems that they see. The mayors were instinctively, in Greece, as you can imagine, threatened. I don't want everyone to know my quote-unquote failures or my inability to meet certain problems with a declining budget in a depression. Why would I want to do that? But many responded. So our original idea was that in many sets of issues, citizens had problems, mayors had the goodwill to solve them, but there was no formal mechanism of getting from here to there. So we wanted to create this mechanism, and we decided to create a solution, as I said before, how to crowdsource the city when citizen spots the problem, with the location, the time, and the issue. And we created this app, which is very simple. Basically, you map all the problems that you find in your city using your smartphone originally, 20 types of problems so far. And the mayor then needs to respond, the city needs to respond on whether they will solve it or not. We found that this was useful. It has been adopted by 10 cities in Greece so far, including Piraeus, which is, I think, the third. We perceive it as being a part of Athens, but it's the third biggest city in Greece. Basically, you use your smartphone, you target the problem. This is Greek, but you describe the problem, what type it is, and then it's in the system. And this is how certain areas which have adopted it look right now on the map. We found that certain cities in Greece didn't actually have ERPs. They didn't have systems where they would manage even their own personnel. So the mayors that have adopted it have used it so far to see which resources are overutilized and underutilized in the city, which advisors of the mayor are solving the problems and who don't. And basically, they're tracking their performance. But this was the easy step, what we have done so far, and this is what we have started. But we want to go much further. We're in discussions with 2 municipalities in Switzerland for them to adopt it, and with many other Greek cities. But we want to go a step further. And going a step further, oh, by the way, because I mentioned low social capital, you can imagine that at the beginning we had a ton of hate speech. You can't imagine the things that we saw from the citizens in the cities that had adopted it. Some were swearing against the mayor, some were putting personal problems on the map, but we're seeing a decline in this. And we want to move a step further and to use those crowdsourcing techniques that I mentioned before in our context. So mayors are right when they say that they have a declining budget to address certain problems. Citizens may map thousands of problems, but the mayors might not be able to solve them for many reasons. Maybe because they don't have jurisdiction and the central state does. Maybe because they don't have the funds. So our idea will be that they will solve some problems on their own, and then they will let the citizens decide which ones they prioritize given a limited budget. And for the rest, we will give them the opportunity to crowdsource. We want to create a Kickstarter of causes and call it Novoville. This is the next step that we plan to launch. And finally, as a final idea, we have seen, we believe that we're going to track this for those cities that have adopted it. We will see a change in trust in the long run if you see an adoption of such techniques. Not necessarily this, but many others. But there are many cities in the world that have similar problems to the Greek municipalities and the Greek political system. Trust is low. Trust is too low. So we want to create this project, the 100 Cities Civic Engagement Project, to offer this for free in 100 cities if we manage to raise the costs in the world that have low social capital and low trust, and then measure the effect of how much this might increase trust in institutions in the medium run. I hope I haven't broken the time limit, but I'm going to close with a final remark. The final remark is that looking at the papers, looking at the cover stories of newspapers, as I said, there are many reasons to be pessimistic. Everyone in Greece right now is focusing on whether we will get the next tranche of the next loan. I think that we're missing the story if we only focus on that. Yes, it's huge. I was part of the negotiating team with the troika of lenders for the previous government. It's a very difficult story. But there are positive stories in Greece, and those positive stories are reflected in the faces of entrepreneurs who have started such ventures after the crisis, and in the faces of many people who started civil society initiatives. There are many, they're becoming much more, and we want to support them. Thank you so much for your attention, and again, it's a true privilege to be here. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. I wonder if I even get to use my threatening cards. Welcome, everybody. This is Lucy Ratcliffe from Citymart, and Thore Vestby from the Mayors for Peace, and Ivan Massow from London. I've just got him London. I'll tell you what, London, you can start. Why don't you go up and tell us a little bit about what's happening in London? We've heard a bit about Greece.
Do you want me to go up there?
Yeah, why don't you do it from there? Because I think some PowerPoints, and then we can sort of categorize it a bit more. Ivan, I just want to, I mean, when we look again, you can look at the little official bio in the back page of the program. But again, if you Google Ivan, and you look at keywords of what's associated with Ivan, you come up with words like London, and conservative, and financial service, and entrepreneur, and marginalized communities, and contemporary arts, and Ideas Britain coach, and Banksy film director, and gay rights campaigner, and head of technology, and mentor, and counselor, and all sorts of self-made millionaire stories, and all sorts of things. But at the moment, perhaps the most relevant phrase is that you are a candidate to be a candidate for the Mayor of London.
That's right.
And we'd like to hear your ideas about how technology and your ideas for how London as a city can help be a change maker.